Today I'm here with my dear mom, and we're talking about her garden and the view that she has that I have learned largely from walking around in nature with her and my dad for much of my life. And we're going to talk a little bit about what would we call it? Organic lawn care?
Sustainable lawn care.
Sustainable lawn care.
I have come to know over the 14 years we have lived here, and I've walked pretty much the same route over all of those years. I've gotten to know the families who live in most of the homes, and many of them I know have children, they have dogs, and they take proper care of their yards. But I often see signs for chemicals having been applied to their outer spaces. And that includes not only lawn chemicals, but also mosquito control, deer control, other pests, what people would call pests. Those kinds of chemicals applied to their yards. And my thoughts immediately go to the children who are hopefully outdoors, to pets. People have become very connected with their animals, especially through COVID. More and more families decided to have not one pet, but two pets, and not just dogs, but there are outdoor cats that are domesticated. And then there are all the other creatures who live more naturally that are not domesticated in our soil and in our land. And all of those creatures come to my mind especially when I see those chemical applied signs. We live right near Narragansett Bay, and our particular neighborhood has let's call it a creek, Mill Creek, which is runoff from the Narragansett Bay. Whatever we have put in our yards when it rains, obviously we have drains in the streets, and also the natural progression is for those runoff waters to go into that creek, which ultimately flows into the Narragansett Bay, multiplying or tripling the effect of the impact of chemicals in our environment. And over the years of gardening, I have developed such a respect for the web of nature, or web of life, I guess we call it. And I have my own sense of responsibility for not interrupting that has accelerated the more I garden and the more I am out in the out of doors. So that's really what has generated my interest in talking to you about this. We have hired a sustainable practice lawn care person. His name is Dana Millar, and he's worked with us over the course of all of the years we've been here, adjusting what he applies to our lawn, because we do have some lawn, according to more current research, according to a soil test, which he takes every year to determine the overall health of that which lies below our gardens and our lawn. And that is what informs him on the sustainable products which he chooses to use, which are quite limited. And if you were to see our yard, you would not point out and say, those folks are not responsible and don't take responsibility for the appearance of their yard. Not at all. We have a beautiful overall yard and respectable grass, if there is such a thing. the more connected you become to the environment, the more you realize that we are, I'm going to read something from Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a book I'll mention later, that we are in a reciprocal relationship with the rest of the living world. And that does not stop at the surface. It goes below. Having done a fair amount of reading on these kinds of subjects because they interest me, you learn that there are beneficial organisms that are attracted to certain plants, and they perform certain functions in the soil to help those plants thrive. And unless you have an awareness of that, is what is going on beneath the surface, you don't really, there's no reason for you to even think about that. And I am now at the point of thinking about those things and feeling it's my responsibility to not harm the entire ecosystem, not just that which we see above the surface. So that is one of the key reasons when I walk by a beautiful yard and see a chemical applied sign, my thoughts immediately go to the entire web of nature and the web of life. And the value of maintaining a beautiful green space above the surface, at what cost? I would just hope that folks would start to become more connected with their environment, their exterior environment. I think folks are already very connected with their interior environments, but to appreciate that which nature gives us every single day, and what our role and what our responsibility is to take care of whatever responsibility, whatever space we have responsible for. How can we be good stewards of the earth? And there are many different practices that can generate that. And I would just hope people would consider thinking about modifying some of the practices that they have so that they are not endangering the web of life below the soil, especially.
Yeah. You said to me last week that you love to see a toad.
I do.
In the yard, and that's a sign of a healthy ecosystem. And when you have chemicals, there's not going to be toads.
That's right.
They're not going to show up.
Among other things.
Yeah. Right. We talked about also pollinators. These are, speaking of the web of life, these are foundations for the chain of life. Insects that pollinate plants like butterflies, like bees. So these pollinators are so essential for a healthy functioning ecosystem, and I don't think it's really known the impact of chemicals on them, but I can't imagine it's good for such delicate creatures.
If chemicals are applied to plants, then the pollinators who naturally land on them ingest that as well. And over a period of time, of course, that has an impact on the insect population.
Makes sense.
It does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Having a family that doesn't look at me and say, that does not look very beautiful out there, but appreciating the greater function that the plants in our yard serve. That's very satisfying to me. And I'm very grateful to you and Dad for understanding that and appreciating
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you've been one of my great teachers for all the connections that exist.
That's a wonderful word, connections. We are so connected. And realizing that generates this reverence for our place, not in dominance, but alongside of all of those other creatures that sustain life.
Well said, Mom.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add in sharing about the greater picture, or you shared a lot about what you love about the garden and naming some plants, which I think is Mom's in her happy place when she's out here, and
I am in my happy place.
Just sitting out here, and I mean,
it's peaceful.
Yeah, even as we're recording this, there are cardinals and there's woodpeckers and finches flying around over here. Somebody flew through here as we saw, but it's a pretty. Sometimes I have a hard time finding words for the feeling you get just sitting and witnessing nature, because it makes you feel a certain way. I think you've always taught me that, and we're relating this to how we care for our yards, because there is a way to do so, as you have talked about with Dana. And I'll put some resources in the notes for this, so if you want to do some more research, you can go look things up. But
there are alternatives, and that's, I think, the point
Yeah.
of why we're talking today. It's the easiest thing to do is just to go the commercial way and do what is easiest. People have very busy lives. They're preoccupied with a lot of things.
Sure.
I maintain that if their preoccupation focused on nature, we would have an entirely different planet. And I am very proud to say that I feel that I'm taking responsibility for what I have control over. And I try very hard not to be judgmental of other people, but I do know that there are other ways.
Mm-hmm.
So if through what we're talking about now, we can pique someone's interest in researching this, I would be very grateful.
You said something before that really stuck with me, in that we are not an island to ourselves. We're part of a whole community.
Nor are we the dominant.
Correct.
In that we are alongside all the other creatures of this earth, hidden and visible, and have a responsibility, even though we have the capacity to dominate, not to dominate.
Mm-hmm. That's consciousness.
Consciousness, exactly.
You had something you wanted to read from any of these? I know
Okay.
you mentioned braiding sweetgrass. But
In particular, my all-time favorite book, which I will recommend
it's an excellent book.
to everyone, but just so folks are aware, there are so many different books out that speak to this subject, and I guess you probably have to have a more serious interest to actually invest the time to read books like this. This book is called The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolben. What they feel and how they communicate. What? What do you mean, how trees feel? Trees have a system of communication
Yes.
that is just being explored and appreciated now. I'll read a very short section from this. A tree's most important means of staying connected to other trees is a wood-wide web of soil fungi that connects vegetation in an intimate network that allows the sharing of an enormous amount of information and goods. Who knew? There is a partnership between fungi and plant. The reason trees share food and communicate is that they need each other. I just think that's an astonishing realization. And here's this static tree that grows so slowly, but we have a stand of hemlocks here, and they are supporting each other in their lives. It just astonishes me. It's wonderful.
Lots going on that we don't see. Just come back to, before you read from Braiding Sweetgrass, something you said about the word that I love, reverence. Mm-hmm. Because when you act with reverence and this goes beyond just caring for your lawn or your yard. It has impacts felt all around you, your loved ones, your communities, and it's a way of walking in the world.
Indeed.
And when you have a sense of reverence, there's an awareness of the things that we can't yet see, like talking about the connections between these hemlock trees, and an appreciation of what I believe is that it's a blessing to be here. It's a miracle and a blessing to be able to be here and share the planet with all of these different species that look and sound different than us, but are very much alive, as more and more studies and these books speak to.
The book I'd like to read from last has become my favorite book. It's entitled Braiding Sweetgrass.
Show the cover.
Braiding Sweetgrass. The author is Robin Wall Kimmerer. And it's indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teachings of plants.
This is a remarkable book. She's a botanist, but also a descendant of the Potawatomi Nation, which was in the northeast kind of Great Lakes sort of region. And I'm really glad you turned me on to this book. So go ahead.
Okay. Our task is to strive to become naturalized to place. Being naturalized to place means to live as if this is the land that feeds you, as if these are the streams from which you drink, that build your body and fill your spirit. To become naturalized is to know that your ancestors lie in this ground. Here you will give your gifts and meet your responsibilities. To become naturalized is to live as if your children's future matters. To take care of the land as if our lives and the lives of all our relatives depend on it, because they do. That's the spirit in which this entire book is written, and it arises out of native wisdom, which I have a growing respect for.
Me too.
So,
Thank you for reading each of those passages and for having this conversation with me in your garden.
I thank you, dear, for taking this in, because my greatest thrill is to know that you will carry this reverence and sense of responsibility along and impart it as you go along, and that's a wonderful feeling. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please, if you have any questions, feel free to write me. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and
thank you.